Welcome, everybody, to Congregation Lador Vidor's special evening debate. This evening, we are pleased to have Rabbi Barry Silver of Congregation Lador Vidor and Sean Kamali, who is our guest of Agatan Foundation. And tonight, the topic is religion compatible with science? And with that, I offer Rabbi Barry to begin our evening. Take it away, Rabbi Barry.
Well, thank you very much, Sharon, for setting this up. And I'm really thrilled to be here with Sean. I've been waiting for months for this to happen. And I'm glad to see he's very relaxed. He's on his favorite couch. He's got a glass of beer. He's good to go. And unlike the other discussions that I usually do, this one is just a freewheeling discussion where we haven't even discussed the format yet, if you can believe that. And so what I'd like to suggest to Sean, if this is okay with you, why don't you take 5 or 10 minutes and you can share some of your thoughts on this. I'll do likewise. And then you can tell me where I went wrong. And then I'll tell you some thoughts that I have about that. And then maybe we can open it up to discussion from others, get their points of view and get their questions. And then if you want, you can ask me questions and vice versa in the process. And then we'll take about 5 or 10 minutes for each of us to sum up the discussion afterwards with some concluding remarks. Does that work for you, Sean?
Sure. I just wanted to say first, I would appreciate if you give a little bit of information about yourself. Since I'm going to post this video on my channel, I want everyone to know you, your background, and what you do. A little bit of even a personal aspect of, I have to tell everyone that I have a massive amount of respect for you. You're doing great. We're going to get there. I'm sure we're going to argue about this, that I last time said that I don't even look at you or call you a rabbi, but you do. And
well, coming from you, I take that as a compliment, since you're not too keen on religious figures. So, I think that's your way of complimenting, which I appreciate.
To know where you're coming from. Go ahead.
I will. And I also want to introduce this by saying that it is a thrill for me to be here with Sean. Sean is really one of my heroes, and I'll tell you why that is. Because one of my all-time great heroes in the world is Christopher Hitchens. I have such respect for him. He was a genius, so eloquent. He was completely unabashed in his bashing of religion. And I think that religion has it coming. And he's awesome. And Sean has not only shared his discussions with us, he's compiled them in a way that's extremely entertaining, that's hilarious, and shows the brilliance of Christopher Hitchens. And you can find it on Agatan. And that's how I know him, because I saw this on Agatan and I'm like, this is incredible. And I'm driving in my car and I'm listening to it. I actually enjoy getting stuck in traffic. You know, it's like, oh, I have this traffic delay. Isn't that awesome? I can hear like number 18 of the best of Christopher Hitchens. And then he also does the same with these other, with Dawkins and with all, and he's got Isaac Asimov. He's got all these great people on. So my yarmulke is off to him. I'm really thrilled with what he does. And as someone who believes in reason and science, I'm just really grateful that he makes these great scholars available to people. It is a true gift to humanity. In Judaism, we call it a mitzvah. It's a good deed. And many people would find it like abhorrent for a rabbi to call putting Christopher Hitchens on the air a mitzvah, but I do. Now, to answer Sean's question, or to share a little bit about me, I am not a typical rabbi. I didn't start out as a rabbi, but I did start out from birth being the son of my father, Rabbi Sam Silver, who also was not a typical rabbi. You cannot understand me without understanding or knowing something about him. He founded, with other religious leaders, the Temple of Understanding 50 years ago, in which they wanted to unite the religions of the world in order to make this world a better place and to increase understanding and harmony among all people. My father's approach to religion was as a way of increasing love and respect for all people. And he used Judaism as a catalyst to tell jokes, to tell stories, to share love and enlightenment. And he was a rabbi till 95, until the day he died, actually. And he loved what he did. And it was infectious. He had legions of followers. He wrote many books. And I stand in his footsteps. And I try to do a semblance of what he was able to accomplish. I'm a little more abrasive. I don't gain all the love and support that he did from the masses because I'm pretty outspoken. Now, he was the first rabbi, among the first in the country, to do interfaith weddings. He spoke out on politics, and he spoke his mind. And he made quite a few enemies along the way, which was to his credit. But I'm probably a little more so. So my background is that I was raised by my father, who wrote a book explaining Judaism to Jews and Christians. On the very first page, he said, Judaism does not require faith without reason. That Judaism demands that everything it believes be supported by evidence, and that if the evidence isn't there, even the existence of God should be challenged and questioned. And you could look at it as a hypothesis. And my father had a very optimistic view of Judaism. Obviously, many Jews, perhaps most Jews, don't see Judaism that way. If you're Orthodox, then you believe that it's a matter of faith, and you don't test faith with hypothesis. You don't look for evidence. You only use evidence when it supports what you're saying, and if it doesn't, you discard it like an old rag. So my father believed in that, and I've taken a step further to form what I call cosmic Judaism that unites Judaism and science. My background is, I'll tell you a little vignette. When I was very young, I was trained by my father not to believe anything without evidence. I became a vegetarian at a very early age because I thought, I'm not going to do anything because everybody else is doing it, or believe what everybody else is doing because everybody's doing it. So I just formed my own opinion about eating meat. I also formed my own opinion about religion, which was based on my dad. And basically that is that there absolutely, positively, definitely is not a supernatural being. There's nobody out there watching us, taking care of us, looking out for us. And there's no afterlife or anything like that. I was totally convinced of that. And I had nobody telling me otherwise. My father never suggested that I should believe in anything but that. At a very early age, I was very attached to my dog, Cindy. And I noticed Cindy getting older and grayer, and she was moving towards the time when I knew she wasn't going to make it. And I remember very early, I said, I know there's no God. I don't believe in anything out there. But if for some reason there was something or someone out there who really cared, bring her back, make her young again, and I'll believe. And if you can't do that, I'm done. And I guess I don't have to tell you.
And that was it.
He couldn't do it. I still remember the pain I felt when I lost her, but I never had any faith in a supernatural being. And if there was anything in me that could possibly have felt that, it was gone. And so I believe passionately in Judaism, in Jewish values, in peace, justice, harmony, love, compassion, helping the poor, caring about animals, caring about the environment, bringing people together. I had the greatest role model in that, my dad. He taught me those values. He shared that with me. I saw him doing it in action. I saw him practicing what most rabbis only preach. I saw how religion can make the world a better place. I saw how it can inspire masses of people to do good things. I saw how it can bring out joy and laughter and love and harmony. I saw all the good, all of it, that religion could bring about. I saw it in my dad. And I also know from history and from my own life, the horrors, the terrible, awful things that happen in religion. And I believe I was toying between being a rabbi and an attorney. I decided to be a civil rights environmental attorney so I could help the world in that way, trying to protect the planet and its inhabitants. I believe this very strongly. I know this for a fact, that the solution to bad religion is not no religion, it's good religion. Just like the solution to bad government is not no government, it's good government. Without any type of inspiration, we'd be in serious, serious trouble. And I believe what Einstein said, that science without religion is lame and religion without science is blind. So he believed that religion and science were compatible, not only compatible, but essential to each other. He believed that you needed to have both, that science without a moral compass would lead to horrors and destruction, and he was right, and that religion without any type of rational basis would also lead to horrors and destruction, and they were right. So I believe passionately that religion must be rational. If you don't follow a logical path, then you'll be pathological. If you don't follow a logical path, then religion will bring out the beast in us, not the best in us. If you believe that myths are reality, like the myths of the Bible, if you take them literally, you'll be myth-guided, myth-led, myth-understood, and you'll myth the boat, and you'll believe a lot of other miscellaneous nonsense. So religion has to be purged of irrational thought, and the four horsemen of atheism do that very well. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I launched Cosmic Judaism at Lador Vador. There's a lot of resistance, a lot of backlash. A lot of people were threatened by it because it didn't believe in supernatural beings and false senses of security. So they fired me. They tried to change the philosophy of it a couple of times. But the congregants kept saying, we love this philosophy. We want to believe in rational Judaism. They insisted on me coming back. They voted overwhelmingly to reinstate Cosmic Judaism, or a rational approach to Judaism. And I really do love what I do. And I'm totally convinced that you can have, I know you can have religion without supernatural beings, because that's what I do. That's what my father did pay lip service to a supernatural God, but he paid very little attention to it. It wasn't central to anything that he talked about. I'll just share one other thing with you, because I did talk to him about this. He was convinced by the watchmaker analogy, where if you're on a desert island, you find a watch. You'd have to conclude this watch didn't just get here by itself. It had to have been designed. And so he thought, well, if the watch had to be designed, then I guess the whole universe is a little more complicated than a watch. It had to be designed. That whole concept has been totally blown away by scientists and by philosophers. It doesn't make any sense unless you don't really get on evolution so well. So my dad was not an evolutionary biologist. I talked to him about it, but not as much as I wish I did. I didn't really get into it with him because it wasn't a big deal to him, and it doesn't matter to him one way or the other too much, and I didn't hear him talk about it very often, so it didn't really matter. But now I do wish, and now that I focused on this more, I do wish that I had those discussions with him, because I would have liked to try to disabuse him of that concept and to liberate him from that, to see where he might have gone. But I'll never know that. Sean, I think I spoke too much about it, and I think I got a little too emotional. So if I did, that's okay, because I believe in not just going through the motions, but going through the emotions. So I won't apologize for it. I don't mind being emotional. I think religion should be spiritual, it should be intellectual, but it also absolutely has to be emotional too. So Sean, now I'll turn it back over to you, and you can do whatever you'd like. You can share some thoughts, some of your background or some questions. And then also I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic.
Sure. I very much like you came from household that I would say my parents used to go to this special or different version of Islam. And they were pretty good at it. They were educated people, smart people. So a lot of times there was a lot of religious arguments in my house. And
they were Sufis, right? Sufi Islam, is that right?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Like a hippiest version of Islam that It doesn't have any of the negative, harsh, aggressive aspects of it. And their, I would say, branch of belief kind of tried to merge science with religion, even though they didn't do a good job, because I don't think that is possible, which is the debate that we're going to have later. But that was pretty much my background. I'm the only child, and my parents were extremely open-minded. I was 7 when they talked to me about sex, and there was no taboo conversation in my house. So that kind of taught me to challenge everything, think independently from a young age. And I was always different from my friends in terms of information and mindset, questioning things, to the point that, let's say, I question like nationality, nationalism, anything like that. And a lot of people don't like it. It's a lot of taboo subjects out there, unfortunately, whenever it's relative to their feelings, which people can't seem to be able to control it. They get upset about their beliefs being questioned, unfortunately. So yeah, that's my background. I still believed in it. Well, I didn't in the beginning. I didn't do anything. And I think I was 15. I started kind of like researching deeply. I started actually attending other religions or religious organizations. And my parents allowed me to, they actually told me, like, this is what we believe. You are, you know, your own person. Go ahead and research and choose what it's best for you. So I started doing it with Bahaism, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, and different available religions out there in Iran, which is unfortunately not as much and not as open, because the Islamic Republic of Iran, the government of Iran, is a theocracy and doesn't allow other religions to flourish. And anyone who's not a Muslim, and especially a Shia Muslim, is kind of treated as a second-hand citizen. Many of them don't have the same rights, and they get mistreated, and plenty of people get fired from their jobs, and it's horrible. So living in that.
I think they're changing the pronunciation from Iran to Iran, because if you start speaking your mind, especially about your religion, you're going to have to run for the hills. And they sometimes do more than just persecute you. If you're a Baha'i, for instance, they might kill you. Or if you're open-minded and you challenge some of the authorities, or if you're a Muslim and you convert out of Islam, it could be a death sentence. But I do want to speak to you now, Sean. Let's tackle this topic now that we've got a little bit of the background out of the way. I'm going to give you the floor now. Why don't you give us your best shot as far as why are religion and science compatible? And I'll just preface this by saying Sean and I have spoken before. We agree on many things, and if you were to ask us 100 questions, we'd probably agree on about 95 of them. But I am very interested in this topic. I think it's a fascinating topic, and I'd love to hear your views on it, and then I'll weigh in on it, and then we can open it up to discussion. So go ahead, Sean.
Okay, so the pretty much subject of the topic is religion compatible with science?
Yes.
Absolutely not to me. Goodbye. Well, again, to get into the details, I think words matter, definitions matter. When we talk about something, we want to be on the same page. What's religion and what's science? What's the definition of religion? What's the definition of science? So religion, again, it's a set of beliefs, usually about gods or God, and talks about supernatural, spirituality, and usually every religion has a prediction of what happens in afterlife. after you die. So just to get that out there, not everything is called religion. Not all organized belief systems are religions. So mainly maybe we should say, is Judaism compatible with science? Because it has to be accurate. Like I know some religions are more compatible with some aspects of science. For example, in Christianity, because of, or Judaism, because of the concept of, just a second, sorry, I'm sorry. So because of the concept of creation and the Bible being, or yeah, the Bible being 6,500 years old. Well, the world, the universe being 6,500 years old in Bible, it's not compatible with the science of evolution, Big Bang, and what we know in physics and biology, geology, and many, many other topics of science. Yet Islam, for some reason, doesn't have a problem with evolution. There's no claim in there that when the world was created, it actually does, they do stem cell research in Iran, unlike here, which unfortunately kind of stopped, or Bush stopped it. I hope it's back on now, I don't know. Let's start with Judaism. Is Judaism compatible with science? I believe not, because what represents Judaism, what the information that we gain or we have to know what Judaism is, as a religion, by the way, everything that I'm talking about, Judaism, is the religion of Judaism. It's not the culture, it's not ethnicity, it's nothing like that. We're talking about the religion aspect of it, or I am talking about the religion aspect of it. You open the book, Genesis, right away. Wrong, 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 wrong. Everything, all the statements, and these are things to be believed. We go forward and we see that for having faith, that means we should trust whatever the God says. It reasonably, logically, it's not compatible. That no matter how you look at it, you have to play a mental gymnastics to be able to say, oh, well, you know, they didn't literally mean this. This is just a moral story. And that's another problem right there. What moral story? God creating a man to work in his garden as a slave. Then creating a woman for him as a slave. Again, the woman didn't have a choice, nothing. And then a talking snake told them that, well, ask the girl, why don't you, ask Eve, why don't you eat the fruit? She said, because God said, if you eat it, you die, which technically is the first lie ever recorded in the history of the religion. God actually lied himself. And the snake said, no, if you eat it, you don't die. So she eats it and shares it with Adam. Obviously, they didn't die. God comes, and this is the fruit of knowledge. God comes, gets pissed of two people who didn't have the knowledge. Knowledge is information. It's what actually we can make decision based upon. So someone who didn't have any information ate a fruit. God comes, gets pissed off from two idiots who he created to be idiots. Yet now they're wise because they ate the fruit, kicks them out of the garden, gives the pain of childbirth, like curses the humanity and their kids for eternity, because two people who couldn't tell the difference between good and bad did something wrong. And just I no matter how I look at it, and there's like contradictions, there is strange things, that the first attempt of God to make companion for Adam was actually animals before Eve. Like there's a whole bunch of crazy things, I'm sorry. But after all of this, like, I don't know how can anybody get any kind of moral values out of this horrific story, which I can actually come up with a better one right now. And this is supposedly is a book of God. It's actually the representative of faith, Judaism, and the religion. So is the short, to like be honest with you, I can't even take it farther. There is no need. I'm gonna give you the rest of my time. Is it possible? Absolutely. I'm sure there are scientific aspects that doesn't contradict with the ideology or dogma, but is Judaism as a religion 100%? We're talking about the whole thing. Is that compatible? Absolutely not. Go ahead, Rabbi.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your sharing your thoughts. And basically, you've made a very good argument for why Orthodox Judaism is not compatible with science. And I agree with you 100%. If you take these stories literally.
What I actually love about this guy, I have to tell my people, he's open-minded and he's such a nice person. So I believe actually you are technically atheist, right? You don't believe in God.
Well, of course, it depends how you're defining God, and we can use those. Let's talk about those definitions also. If you're talking about a supreme being, a supernatural being, an entity, no, it's all baggage. And probably using the word God is problematic no matter how you define it, because in the minds of most people, it's associated with a really horrible figure out of the Bible who does treat people like pawns and slaves. He's killing people. He's wiping them out. He's, as I think Richard Dawkins said it best. What is he? He's filicidal. He's pesticidal. He's he's a genocidal. I mean, you take all the descriptions that Dawkins gave about God, all the horrible things, and I'll agree with every one of them. I won't challenge him at all, and I'll thank him for it, for pointing out the flaws and deficiencies in the Torah, which is why large groups of people who are Jewish reject a literal view of the Torah. The Reform movement rejects it. Reconstructionists reject it. Humanists reject it. Most Jewish renewal reject it. So you have large swaths of Jewish people, more than half, I would say, the majority, who reject the literal view, some of whom to various degrees. Some are like me. We don't just reject it. We think it's dangerous and we think it's violent and we think we have to publicly repudiate it, which I do here in every chance I get. Others don't really embrace it, but they don't want to make waves because they don't want people to get upset and to drop out of their congregation. And so they don't really buy into it. And others try to pretend that it's all true and act like it's true and try to reconcile it. By the way, reconciling Genesis, or trying to reconcile Genesis with science, is the bastardization and the debauchery of science. There is no possible way to do it, and I have no tolerance for people who pretend to do it. Many Orthodox Jews try to do that, as well as fundamentalist Christians. We had one in a debate, and they were debating, and they were saying how the Bible, the biblical view of creation is true, and so is a world being like billions of years old. And when I pressed him on it, and I was trying to be polite, I was trying to be deferential, he said, well, of course, when the animals were created, they were created billions of years old. That's why if you do dating, they come out. And I said, that's insane. And I was chastised by some of my people, but I couldn't think of any other way to describe it. All right, so I'm 100% with you, Sean. The biblical view of creation is completely incompatible with science, and anyone who tries to do it is just bastardizing and prostituting science to try to make it fit their preconceived notions. However, where I'm not sure whether you're aware of this or not, I figure you must be, because you know a lot about religion. You must be aware that there are entire branches of Judaism that represent more than half of the Jews in the world that do not take the biblical view literally at all, and we reject it to various extents. What I do in cosmic Judaism, I'm blatant and overt as you are, as Christopher Hitchens is, in saying that this is not just nonsense, it's dangerous nonsense. Okay, so now we have to discuss, I suppose you might be saying, well, then Reform or Reconstructionist, what I do, is not really religion. Is that what you would say? Is that what your take would be? Because we don't believe in supernatural beings, and we don't take the books literally. I mean, how would you respond to this?
I would actually, I have my own analogy in that aspect. I say, because I had many arguments, and in my channel, I have to do this in a YouTube channel. So the usual arguments that it was used from Harris, Dawkins, Hitchens, anyone, was not good enough for me. So I'm actually proud of this. I came up with this argument myself. So let's assume basketball has 100 do and don'ts, and those are the rule books of basketball. Same as my kind of example was Islam, but it could be exactly the same thing with Judaism. As a religion, as a whole, as a text that we have, that it actually gives us what technically the information, the rule book of Judaism, Torah, Quran, Bible, all of them. So let's say in basketball there is 100 do and don'ts. If someone uses only a standard basketball jersey and standard basketball shoes, but doesn't do anything else relative to basketball. For example, there is no hoop, there is no dribbling, the guy punches people and shoots it with his foot. Of course, this still can be a sport, but it's not basketball anymore. 3 out of the 100 is being followed. So at best, this is 3% basketball, 97% something else. So to me, a religious person who claims to be religious, they are really not. Who claims to be Muslim, yet doesn't follow any of the things that Islam says. And it's just Muslim because his parents were Muslim, and he thinks because of the belief in God and Muhammad and Quran, he's a Muslim. Mathematically, to me, he's exactly the same thing. He's 3% Muslim, 97% something else, which that actually 97% is more common with me, an atheist, a non-believer, who lives my life exactly like he does. I don't do namaz, he doesn't do namaz. I don't kill people, he doesn't kill people. Like, everything is exactly the same. So why is it that people try to say, this is my category, this is my group of people, and I belong to this, yet actually there is so much more closer to the rest of humanity and actually non-believers. So in that aspect, I think if you, Rabbi, believe that you are, or you say that you are Jewish, that's why I said religiously, I don't think you are Jewish anymore. You are definitely a spiritual leader or teacher. I wouldn't dare saying that. Jewish, it's only the good verses or the little things of the culture that you held with you and you practice and you preach. And the God aspect of it, it's not there. Rape is not okay to you. Genocide is not okay to you. The horrific things that it's in the scripture is not okay with you. So as a challenge, like literally if you go back and highlight the verses that you agree with, I think it's going to be so minuscule that you probably are less than 5% Jewish comparing to the whole rule book. And to me, that really is not good enough, and there is a huge difference between you and an Orthodox Jew. And to call you Jewish and them Jewish, it's not actually fair at all to you. To put you in the same category as someone who denies science, which I know you are a huge fan of science. So go ahead.
All right, well, I appreciate you throwing down the gauntlet. And let me try to explain why I think that I actually am Jewish.
Religiously, not culturally, religiously.
Which might come as a shock to certain people that I would need to explain why I'm Jewish, but let me give it a shot. First of all, this is going to take a little while because it's going to take a little while to. Okay, good. All right, let's start out where you wanted to start out with the definitions. Okay, are religion and science compatible? And let's start out with, first of all, science. I am a huge fan of science. I think science is responsible for making humanity what we are today. I think the greatest gift that humans have is the gift of reason, and the gift of reason has been refined in such an incredible way through science. It helps us in an organized way to use our rational minds to discern truth from fiction. And I think science is an incredible blessing. As Einstein said, compared to reality, our science is primitive and childlike, but it's our greatest gift. And we should apply it to everything, including our lives and religion. So what is science? Science is not just a series of findings and conclusions and facts. Science at its core, and perhaps most importantly, is a method of ascertaining knowledge based on having an open mind and using hypotheses and proofs and evidence to support their beliefs. That is a very dangerous thing when it comes to religion, and most religious authorities would have nothing to do with that because it says open up every belief you have to challenge, allow it to be challenged and questioned, don't accept anything on faith. I'm open to that. You can ask me anything, you can challenge anything, you can question it all, and if I can't back it up with knowledge or evidence, then like my father said, it's out the window, and I'm not beholden to anything. There's not one belief that I have that, oh no, if you threaten that one, then I'll have to find something else to do. There's nothing. I would just say, hey, you're right, and then move on. So that's what science is. Now, what's religion? Okay, now, to you, as you describe religion, which is why you think I'm not really following the Jewish religion, you think I'm following the Jewish culture, to you, religion is, and I took some notes, it's, first of all, it's based on a biblical view of creation. It's based on a view of a belief in I noticed you said, interestingly, you said, usually it's about God, usually it's about supernatural beings, usually it's about an afterlife. And you're right, usually it is, but it doesn't have to be. That's the key difference. So if you're going to ask me, are religion and science compatible? I would say the way most religion is practiced, I'm going to agree with you. It is not, because what they're practicing is some kind of unscientific, irrational nonsense. So the way most religion is practiced, it is not compatible with science. But as you say, usually, that opens the door to agreement between us in that I believe that religion can be compatible with science, not just the culture, the religion. It can be, and it is. What we do and what other folks are doing, Unitarians are doing, what many, well, not many, but some groups are doing is compatible. And here's why. Now we have to define what is religion. Now, by your definition, even by your definition of religion, Sean, they are compatible because you're saying it's usually involved with afterlife, God, biblical view. So if it's usually, that opens the door for Well, not always. And so if it's one of those cases where it's not always, then it is compatible. But let me just share with you, to clear things up, what is religion? Okay, now, if you look it up in the dictionary, you ask people, they'll say, many people will say, like you do, religion is belief in the supernatural. And for long periods of time in history, that was pretty much what religion was. It was dependent upon a belief in the supernatural with a lot of other corollaries to it. This is how I understand religion, based on the greatest religious teacher I had, my father. He told me that religion is related to the word ligament. The L-I-G in religion means to bind or tie together. If you speak Spanish, you know the word ligar, meaning to tie together. Religion, like a ligament binds parts of the body together. Religion ties us together with other things. What other things? If you transcend yourself so that you're no longer just thinking about yourself, but you're thinking about other people, then you're tied together with them. That's religion. If you tie yourself together with a people that for thousands of years have tried to make the world a better place, that's religion. If you bind yourself together with the entire cosmos and you try your best to understand it and figure it out and try to understand what are these processes that give rise and sustain life, that's religion. If you're trying to figure out how can I lead a moral life and not just think about myself, but connect in a moral way with others, that's religion. If you're trying to understand how did I get here and why am I here and what am I doing and how can I tie my life in with a greater purpose, that is religion by definition. So clear what I do is Jewish and it's religious. What else is religion? You could think of religion as an effort to understand how did I get here, what am I doing here, and how can I live ethically and morally with others? That clearly is a basic definition of religion. It does not involve the supernatural. Now, some people will say, well, the reason why you do all these things, the reason why you know things, the reason why you're moral, the reason why you believe in certain things is because God told it to you. God told you to do this, and God is a celestial dictator, as Hitchens would say, telling you what to do. Well, you could believe that, but you don't have to be religious. You can believe in morality, you can believe in ethics, you can believe in the wonders of the universe, you can believe all of that without a supernatural being. How do I know that? Because that's what I do. Okay, now the biblical view of creation clearly is wrong. Okay, so we know, for instance, that the way that human beings were created is completely laughable. That Adam was shown all the animals by God, and then he said, hey, you know, these don't do the trick for me. I need someone more like me. And God said, oh, sorry about the oversight. I forgot. Okay, my bad. I'll go to sleep and I'll correct it. Like, how would he forget that? So then he takes a rib out of him to create a woman? That is so sexist and so demeaning and so laughable that anyone today who believes it ought to maybe enter into an insane asylum or have their head examined, yet millions of people do. Many of them are called Orthodox or fundamentalist Christians. It's nonsense. When you look at the story of Lot's wife being turned into a pillar of salt, you should take that with a grain of salt. When you look at the Tower of Babel, you should look at it just as a tall story and a bunch of babble. I mean, if you look at all these stories, they didn't happen. But now let me address something else that you said, Sean. You're saying, well, if I don't believe that, I can't really be Jewish religiously. I could be culturally, but I can't be Jewish religiously because the religion is based on this fundamental text. And if I'm rejecting the very basis of the text of Judaism, then in what way could I possibly call myself Jewish? Let me give you an example. I like your sports example. I do a lot of sports too. Let's say that you believe in democracy and the Constitution, all right? What we do today with the Constitution is really, really different than what they did when it was written. When the Constitution was written, they believed that you could own people, that blacks were the property of whites. They believed that women had absolutely no rights. They believed things that today would be considered barbaric. There was no welfare for children, could be treated any way they want. These things, you even under the Constitution, could commit genocide against Native Americans, and that was considered kosher and even proper under our government. Today, these things are appalling. We're deeply embarrassed and ashamed by genocide against Native Americans, slavery of the blacks, the treatment of women as chattel with no rights. But we still follow the Constitution, and we still follow democracy, and we still call ourselves Americans, and we still say, I believe in democracy. What we do today is radically different than that. And we've grown and we've evolved. And to use your analogy, the reason why we still call ourselves Americans and still follow democracy, because you can see a direct line between the United States Constitution and what we do today. It's not like what we're doing today is divorced from it, has nothing to do with it. There's a direct line to it, and you can see the evolution and the growth over time. The same is true with Judaism. There's an absolute direct line from Judaism in biblical days to today. And you can see it as Judaism evolves. Some people, especially the Four Horsemen of atheism and Hitchens and others, refuse to allow Judaism the right to evolve. And they compared Judaism as it was practiced 3,000 years ago in primitive, barbaric, Iron Age times or Bronze Age times to what Judaism and say, well, I'm sorry, I don't recognize any change in Judaism for the last 3,000 years. I don't recognize your right to do that. You're stuck with that. That would be like me saying, well, if you believe in medicine, then you must want to drill a hole in someone's head in order to let evil spirits out. George Washington was killed by people who applied leeches and he bled to death. I mean, what we do in modern science today in medicine is nothing like before. Hippocrates thought there were 4 humors. And the reason why he got sick is because these humors are not in proper balance. Today we find that humorous. It's ridiculous. But he launched us on a path where he said, stop believing in gods to cure disease and start using reason and science to analyze it. We don't follow him and venerate him because everything he said was true. We follow him because he started us and he launched us on a path of finding out the truth and on the great advance of medicine. And so that's what, now let me just share with you one other thing, Sean. I want to clear this up and I want to make this very clear to everyone. As you can see, I completely reject the stories, the biblical stories of Genesis, Tower of Babel, Noah's Ark. And I agree with you. Not only are they patently false, unscientific, many of them have morals that are so questionable or abhorrent, we would do well to use them as teaching or pedagogic devices only to show where we've come from and what we shouldn't believe, because they're dangerous and they're still followed today. But I will differ from you perhaps in this regard, and maybe you're not as familiar with the Bible as I am, and maybe there's certain things that you may have overlooked. So let me share with you something. In the biblical story of Genesis, which I reject, there is a kernel, and it's not a way of reconciling science. I don't play that game. It's ridiculous. It does say that human beings were created b'tselem Adonai. What that means is in the image of God. And there are other parts where they consider human beings to be in the image of God. Now, let me just suggest to you, if you're going to use that as a way of saying that humans are unique among the creatures in that we were specially created or that we're different in kind than everything else, I would reject that. Okay, so I don't want you to hold me as one of these people who thinks evolution happened except for humans or that humans are better than other creatures. We're not. And the only way to understand humanity is to understand primate behavior, because we're a primate and a mammal. And the best way to understand who we are is to read zoology. However, I do like the concept of saying that there is something different about human beings than other animals, in that we have the ability, our minds are very developed, in that we're the only creature capable of being cruel. We're the only creature capable of elevating ourselves beyond instinct. So a lion will kill an animal, and it's not cruel, it's not barbaric, it's instinct. It doesn't think, I'm going to take this life and I'm going to cause suffering. It doesn't do that. We do as humans. We are the only species capable of practicing cruelty intentionally because we know what we're doing, we do it anyway. But there is something unique about humans. We have the ability to think and to reason and to transcend instinct. And in that way, this gift that we have of reason elevates us. If you look at it, now let me also define what I believe is, let me give you a working definition of God, because you asked me about God, okay? So the God of the Bible is fiction. I don't believe in that concept, and I think it's dangerous. It's used to justify genocide. But I define God as a creative process. It's not a person, it's not a thing, it's not an it, it's a process, a creative process that is in awe, unites awe, and beyond awe, that constantly transforms what is into what could be. And religion will hopefully transform not only what could be, but what should be. So this process of change it's amoral. There's no morality to it. People die, species disappear, rape and murder happen, animals fight over territory. There's no morality to it. Religion is an effort to infuse morality into an amoral world. The only morality is what's going to cause survival. So I believe that's my definition of God. Obviously, it's radically different, but I'll leave it at this, and I'll finish with this, because I've been talking for a long time. So Einstein did say, science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. So Einstein's like the smartest guy I know. He believed that religion and science were not only compatible, but essential. Carl Sagan said, imagine what reserves of awe and wonder would happen if religion was open to the revelations and the methods of science. Sooner or later, he said, such a religion will emerge. So chalk up the answer to our question, are religion and science compatible? Carl Sagan would say, like Einstein, not only yes, but they both will make each other better. And they're not only compatible, it's essential to have both and not one without the other. Are they compatible? If they are not joined together, then the life on this planet is going to be severely jeopardized, because irrational fundamentalist religion is teaching us one of the worst concepts of all, that this world is temporary and there's a better one coming. That's trivializing this world. It's hoping for the end of this world. It's dysfunctional and it's dangerous. And it's also teaching you to think that if you believe a certain hocus pocus about Jesus or something else, you'll go to heaven and everyone else will suffer. That is religious apartheid, and it's divisive, and we better get over it quickly. So that's my response. I gave you a lot to work with, Sean. I'm going to give you all the time you need to respond, and then we will open it up to questions.
Then hopefully we open it up to different people. Maybe you want to say something back. So I'm gonna start with saying that I'm gonna be kind of a little evil and say, first of all, you kind of changed again. So I started with distinguishing religion and Judaism. Now you're getting rid of all the negative things about Judaism. Again, the rule book. That's what we have, that if right now a new type of people without information come to the planet, the rule book of Judaism, Torah, gives them the information of what Judaism is. So you are...
I told you that
No, hold on.
The Constitution's a rule book, but it's changed over time. Judaism doesn't depend.
No, I understand what they want to say. So they are getting rid of all the actual, I don't know, information from the book. You say, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that, I don't believe in that. So now that I got rid of 90%, 95% of it, now it's compatible with science. So, of course. And then you call that still Judaism. To me, it's not. It's kind of like this. Imagine if Toyota gives us a car. Gives me a car, let's say Toyota Corolla. I start changing the engine, changing the hood, body, door, interior, exterior. The only thing that I keep from that Toyota Corolla is the frame. Everything else, let's say I put Mercedes parts on it. What do you still call that Toyota? No. It used to be a Toyota, now it's something else. So you are doing exactly the same thing with Judaism. Again, I'm not talking about religion, because you started saying like this can be religion, this can be religion, that can be religion. Of course, I wasn't talking about religion. Anything can be religion, part of a religion, not the whole religion. Picking your nose can be part of a religion. I'm so glad it's not invented yet, but it could be. So there is a huge difference with what I'm saying comparison to your response to what I said. I said, you are ignoring most of what it technically, the definition of Judaism is, and now you're coming up with your own definition. Now, let's say we want to talk about God. If what the definition of God is something in my head different than the one in your head, we are not going to be talking about the same thing. So when we want to talk about religion, Judaism, God, anything like that, we have to be on the same page. So you and Einstein, which unfortunately Einstein, based on the quote that you said, seems to be religious, which I have a whole bunch of videos that I made from his quotes that I have him lined up, that you know. I'm not arguing about the fact that he was not religious at all. He actually said, I'm agnostic. And because the definition of God head for himself was different, if he talks about religion to the average person, to a university setup in a lecture, do people understand what he's talking about? Absolutely not. So he has to first define what he means by that, because his standards, the words that he's using, is completely different from what other people are using. I think you're doing the exact same thing. So you created your own version of Judaism, your own version. Of course, there are different versions of Judaism, and that's normal. There are different versions of Islam, different versions of Christianity. But for any of them to become compatible with science, they need to get rid of that religious, superstitious nonsense. So now you got rid of that. Now what's left?
Let me respond to you, because I can see that I did not do a very good job of articulating specifically about Judaism, because I wasn't really focusing in on that. So let me focus in on Judaism, as you say, and let me try to help explain to you why Einstein said that he was a Jew and considered himself Jewish. And I agree with you to this extent. He completely, absolutely rejected the concept of a personal God. He totally rejected an afterlife. He thought it was for weak-willed people. And so I agree with you 100%. And I'm not one to try to make Einstein into something that I think he would have been. I take his direct quotes, I extrapolate from that. Let me share with you, and I'm not sure you're familiar with this, and I want you to have an open mind about it, just like I'm open-minded to you about Judaism, because I'm not sure that you understand the core of Judaism if you think that I've jettisoned 95% of it. So let me just share with you something. In the Torah, along with primitive barbaric notions, it says about 36 times to help the poor. It's not a sideshow, it's not some kind of peripheral view. It says it over and over and over again, not only to help the poor, it goes beyond socialism. It says that if you own a field with food, you must allow the poor onto your property, because it doesn't belong to you, that land. That land is the planet. It belongs to God. So I would say it belongs to nature. It's not yours to do what you want with it. It's on loan. You allow them to enter the poor. Don't pick your crop bare. Don't pick up the food that dropped and fell to the ground. Leave it for whom? For the poor, for the widow, for the orphan, and perhaps most importantly, for the stranger. Who is the stranger? Well, in Hebrew, the word for stranger, hager, means the non-Israelite, the non-Jew. And I've heard the four horsemen say repeatedly, oh yes, love your neighbor as long as they're Jewish, but they don't believe in helping other people. Wrong, false. They don't know the Bible, they don't know the Torah. The Torah says, leave that for the stranger. And that's not peripheral, it's core to Judaism. And I can't be Jewish without believing that. Something else, most people don't know this, maybe you don't know it. People say, love thy neighbor as thyself. Isn't that a beautiful thing that Jesus said? No, Jesus didn't originate that. Moses did. Okay, it's in the Torah. It's in the Torah more than once. Love the stranger as yourself. That's not just something that's peripheral. That's central to Judaism. Not only does it say that, you might not know this. It says, "V'ahavta et hager kamocha." Love the stranger as yourself. Why? Because you were strangers in the land of Egypt, and you know the heart of the stranger. In other words, the suffering that you endure should not bring out the beast in you. It should bring out the best in you. That is essential to Judaism, to love the stranger. Why also? Because B'Tselem Adonai, the image, a divine holy image, every person is sacred. This was not practiced by most people in biblical days. As primitive as the Bible was, they were way ahead of its time in saying that everyone is sacred. Something else that the Bible said, among these primitive stories, it also says that the entire world is a singular unit, and that all of humanity descends from a common source. We're all one family. That is the reading of the Torah. Now, many cultures say, no, no, no. We were created differently. We were created like the Native Americans. God put clay in an oven. The black people came out. They were too long in the oven. White people, not enough time. We were just right. The Japanese say that they were the ones who were created perfect. Everybody else inferior. All these other cultures, they were saying, we're perfect and you're inferior. Jews said we were all created in the divine image, all of us. And Abraham, although yes, he did some things like he was willing to sacrifice his son. I always hear that from the atheists. I always hear that. I've never heard this story though. I've never heard the story that Abraham was the first one to see that in all the diversity and all the different forces, he saw everything being one. And he saw a singularity that is all emanating from one source. And I've never heard this story either. I've never heard any atheists say, and I question their knowledge of the Bible or their objectivity. I've never heard one of them say that when God said he was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, that Abraham said, no, that would be wrong. Even if there's evil people there, would you destroy the whole city if I could find you 50 people that were good? He's pleading for people who are not even friendly with his own people, who are aliens, a different grace entirely. Let me find 50 people and save the people. God said, okay. Then 45, 40, 35, 30. Do I believe the story really happened? No, because there's no God that he was bargaining with, but it shows the mentality of the Jewish people. And what happened at the end? At the end, he said, I may be risking everything. He might have pissed God off so much, God would have said, okay, I'll kill you too, I don't care. What chutzpah to talk to me like that? Instead, he said, let me talk to you one more time. What if I find 10 people? And God said, okay, I'll save him for 10. And that's the basis of a minyan. Let me share with you something else. Love the stranger, love the neighbor, help the poor. Passover teaches us to celebrate earth and rebirth and the crops that we have, to celebrate the planet and to give back. Sukkot, Shavuot, the Jewish holidays are agricultural, giving thanks. The word Jewish, Yehudi, means to be grateful. It means to have an attitude of gratitude for everything we have and to have a blessing for everything we have. And even though they were praising some supernatural being, I give thanks to nature, and that is Jewish. That is essential to Judaism. That has been going on since the beginning of Judaism. That is part of Jewish religion. It is not part of Jewish culture. It's part of Jewish religion. To show gratitude for this planet and to show kindness to living things and to consider everyone our brothers and our sisters. On Shabbat, we light 2 candles to symbolize the light of love and of reason. We drink wine to symbolize sweetness. We have ideals in Judaism that go back from the very beginning, the essence, the core of Judaism. It's not something that I'm just taking 5%. What's the essence of Judaism? Emet v'tzedek, truth and righteousness, and also shalom. These are the core values of Judaism: truth, logic, evidence, righteousness, peace. These are the values that I got from my father. And my father did not practice some kind of bastardized religion. My father was in the line and the tradition of Reform Judaism, the largest denomination of Judaism in the country, the one that believes in Jewish values and ideals, the group of Jews that are fighting together as a whole in order to bring about less gun violence, protect the environment, women's rights, and international harmony. These are the Jewish values that come right from the very beginning. And so I am not practicing my own brand of Judaism. I am following the natural evolution of Judaism that went from tribal to global to cosmic, as Einstein envisioned. And this is the core of Judaism. This irrational nonsense about a supernatural God can easily be jettisoned. I've done it, and Judaism is not weakened at all. It's strengthened by it. Now, I'd like to ask other people to jump in. So
I wanna respond to that first. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, take all the time you want to respond.
It's not going to be much. I think, again, you use the same type of reasoning that I go back to the car example of the Toyota Mercedes thing. So it's kind of like you took all the dangerous aspects of that car away, and now you're saying that particular car is safe. But that car was made like that. You changed it. Don't call it that car anymore. You created a new thing. So when you constantly saying Judaism, the actual basis of Judaism is what it was: horrible. You changed it, you brought morality, more morality to it, you rejected all the bad parts, and now you're emphasizing on the good parts, which is everywhere. You give the sample of giving thanks, like Japanese when they eat, when they want to start eating. Thanks for the food. That's the first thing they do. It's not uniquely Jewish. So
I never said it was.
that's what I'm saying. So don't call it Judaism as of like Judaism is a moral guide and it's going to give us all the correct guidance, and if you believe in Judaism, you're going to be a better person. It is absolutely not that. It's because you are a different person, you're open-minded, you changed your mind, you rejected a lot of bad things, you kept the good ones, and these good ones...
Judaism has the right to evolve.
But to you.
No, not to me. Millions of Jews have evolved.
A lot of them have, and their mindset has. But because unfortunately because unfortunately Jews don't distinguish culture, ethnicity, and religion, everything about that person is called Jewish. We have Jewish atheists, which is a word that shouldn't even exist. You can't be a non-believer believer. But because Judaism is a unique situation that they didn't have their homeland in, especially like in modern times, of the way that Christian nations did, the same way that Muslim nations did. It created a culture amongst these poor people, I'm so sorry, unfortunate people, that the rest of the world hated them and fought them and treated them horribly, and they're victims. So now these people culturally are together regardless of their faith, and they call each other Jewish, even though religiously it doesn't make sense anymore. So any good thing that you have, you are saying that Judaism is providing this. It's not unique to Judaism. But there is a lot of horrible things that it is actually unique to Judaism.
Let me correct something, okay? A concept doesn't need to be unique to Jews in order to be Jewish. It's not like Judaism consists only of ideas. No, let me finish. Judaism is not just ideas that only Jews thought of and nobody else came up with. If Jews give thanks for food and so does somebody else, it doesn't make it any less Jewish. It's essential to Judaism. We say a prayer before we eat. The fact that somebody else does it also doesn't mean it's no longer Jewish. It just means that there's certain values that are universal. I've never claimed that Judaism is the only religion possible, or even the best religion, or the only one that's moral, or that if you're not Jewish, you can't be moral. I've never claimed that. But to suggest that, well, giving thanks for food is not Jewish because Japanese are doing it too, that's absurd. Now let me share something else with you. The Mercedes-Benz of today is not like a Mercedes when it was first invented. It's computerized. It's radically different. It goes much faster. Are you going to tell me that, well, it's not really a Mercedes? You're going to have to call it something else now because what it does is very different than an original Mercedes. There's a direct line from the original.
Whoa. This is actually a very good point. Hold on. Is there any edited version of Torah right now?
Is there any what?
The Torah, is it edited? Or is it the exact same thing that it was introduced, I don't know, thousands of years ago?
Well, that's a question for scholars and historians.
No, but right now, the one that you are actually talking about, the one that you are reading from, it's not the modern Mercedes that you're talking about. You didn't take out all the horrible things out of it. You're still opening up the same book.
Let me answer your question. The Torah that we have today, the Orthodox will tell you that was given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai. Modern Jews like me and scholars and historians don't believe that at all. We believe it was created over time, but the Torah that we have today is pretty much, according to scholars and historians, pretty much how it was 2,000 years ago. But just like the Constitution doesn't allow rights for all types of people, it's been supplemented and amended with amendments, with statutes, with new laws.
No, I understand. I only mentioned this to say that your example, it's not accurate. When you say the Mercedes of old and new, the new one is nothing comparable to the old. There's no old parts in it. Yet, your book that you're still teaching from, you're reading actually these things from, quoting, is actually the old one. You're only finding those ones. And you say these things are like, what was it? Like you actually said, essential to Judaism. So what about the ones that you're ignoring?
Well, I'm not ignoring them. Why don't you go back to the original blueprint for a Mercedes? You by your analogy, let's go to the blueprint for original Mercedes. It's going to build something very different than today, but they don't use it anymore.
Sure, that's exactly my point. That what I'm saying is, you created your version. Yes, the book still everybody universally is the same. You change that book. You say, okay, these parts I don't want, this part I want. So I'm saying, why do you call it even Judaism anymore?
Let me explain something to you, Sean. It's not me. The entire body of Judaism has been evolving for thousands of years to become the moral force for good in the world. If you look at historians who are neutral, they will all tell you the Jewish people seems to be a light to the nations. The Jewish people invented morality. The Jewish people have shared a sense of conscience with the world. The Jewish people for thousands of years have said, yes, the Torah was the original, but then there's also the Talmud, there's the Mishnah, there's the responsa, there's Jewish writings, there's Jewish history. And it's not an accident that Jewish people are doing very well when it comes to endeavors of philanthropy and in science and in helping the world to become a better place.
Yes, because they're actually putting their religion aside. They're saying, I don't believe in this. Therefore, no. Look at how successful the Nobel.
You're ignoring what I told you. The Bible says 36 times.
All right.
To help the poor.
And you are ignoring the rest of it. That's exactly my point.
I'm not ignoring it. I'm giving
But
Judaism
helping the poor is, again, nothing unique to Judaism.
Yeah, I know it isn't, because you're like the fish who's swimming in a lake and doesn't know it's wet. It's not unique to Judaism because that value has been adopted by Western civilization as the norm. If you go to India or you go to other places, they're not necessarily going to help the poor. They might think, well, that's karma. That's how they're supposed to be. Jewish values have permeated society so much that you don't even know that you're practicing them. You don't even know when you give money for income tax.
I'm so sorry. Hold on a second. If I massacre people, would that be a Jewish tradition too?
That also is a legacy of Judaism, but Judaism
So
has evolved.
a lot of like, the Muslims are even kind of like let's say Shias that are killing Sunnis and Sunnis that are killing Shias are influenced by Judaism, right? Since it actually became before Islam.
They are very much influenced by Judaism as written.
So
in the
whether
Torah,
they know it or not, they're actually Jewish too.
But they would not be influenced by modern Judaism. They would be influenced by an irrational, archaic form of Judaism. See, what you're doing, Sean, is you deny me the right to practice my religion as I want.
No, not at all. I'm actually arguing the name should be different, because everybody else, when they talk about Judaism, are not talking about your version. Unless, hopefully, you're going to be actually the biggest person in Judaism and the society and religion, and actually be the number one and, talk about your values, which is wonderful. I don't have a problem with it. It's fantastic. I wish Judaism, whenever anyone heard it, was your version. I don't have a problem with it.
Let me finish. It's not just my version.
Did I say it's just your version?
No, it is not. My father practiced Reform Judaism, and he was part of a national movement of Jews practicing what you're now calling my version. Let me
took
finish.
it farther. I said your version because you took it farther, and you actually gave the example of evolution, and you even said, I wish I spoke to him about evolution before. And that's what I'm saying. So what you believe about Judaism, it is actually different from your dad. So it's your version.
Let me finish. What I believe about Judaism is the direct result and consequence of my father's influence. The only difference is that once in a while, rarely, he made reference to God. I make reference to God, but I mean something different than what he did. But that wasn't anything central to what he was talking about. What I'm doing is following through what my father did, and it was identical. My father was the most generous, loving, giving, ecumenical person who spread cheer and goodwill wherever he went. And the reason why he did it was because of Jewish values. Not only that, he was part of the Reform Jewish movement, and he associated with other rabbis and other congregations that were doing the exact same thing. The Judaism that you refuse to allow to evolve. You say, well,
not at all. Please don't say that. Please don't say that.
You do.
I love the fact that Jews has evolved dramatically to the point that they don't even believe in God. They don't believe in the horrible things in their book, and they're still calling themselves Jews. I like that. In reality, it actually creates a better world. I do not refuse that. But I'm saying if the definitions are different, there should be a different word for it. It's confusing. That's all I'm saying. I'm actually more for what you do.
Well, I appreciate that, but let me explain. It's not just willy-nilly. We don't just take certain passages and say, I like this one, I don't like this one. This one's okay, this one isn't. That's not what we're doing. And if you perceive that, you don't understand the process.
Do you teach any of the negative ones? Do you promote rape, slavery, anything like that?
I teach all of those as things that we've outgrown, but let me explain what we do.
Okay, so you pick and choose, exactly contradictory with what you said right now.
No. You might see it that way, but if you give me a chance to explain, I'll tell you what we're doing. We apply Jewish values and principles to our understanding of the Torah and Judaism. So we look at everything through a sieve of reason, of rational thinking, of rahmanis or compassion, of shalom, of peace, of goodwill towards people and love. and we evaluate it according to those Jewish ideals. And if the parts of the Torah don't match up with those Jewish ideals, then they're jettisoned. It's not picking and choosing at random. It's not some process that goes on willy-nilly. We're applying Jewish ideals to our foundational documents. And if they don't measure up to the Jewish ideals of peace, love, harmony, kindness, compassion, respect for all people, then we say this represents the beginning and not the end of our search. Now, is Sean still with us? Because I want to make sure he hears this. Okay, then I want to make sure you hear this, and then we'll turn it over to others. If we were to take a child, and that child had very loving tendencies, and that child also had tendencies as a 2 or 3 year old in which he was aggressive, which he did things that weren't very nice. And as he grew, he became more and more generous, more and more loving, more and more kindly. You would say, well, you better change your name, son, because the way you're acting now, it's not really like you were before. I remember when you were before, it's very different. So take on a new name, change your name. What I'm saying is Judaism is like that child. We have a lot of great things in Judaism, a lot of great concepts, a lot of beautiful principles that are with us and that guide us in our evolution and our change. And today, modern Jews are radically different than before. Orthodox Jews.
I absolutely agree. I
going back
understand,
before.
but please
You
don't
said, but
make
modern-
the example that you made about the child. If the child is, the difference is, I'm not saying change your name. I'm saying 30 years later, don't call that a child anymore. That child has changed to adult. That's a different version.
Oh yes, we practice today modern Judaism, not childlike Judaism.
Okay,
I would
okay,
say
no,
that.
I
have
like
to
that.
open
I
it
like
up to
that.
you guys
Say
have
modern
to
Judaism. Don't say
Wait,
Judaism.
wait, Shannon, before you open
We're
it up.
opening it up.
All right,
Okay.
all right, all right.
We have
Hold on.
4 people that have questions, Rabbi.
Aaron, hold on. Sean just agreed with me. It took 2 hours or whatever, but he agreed. He said he likes that version. We reached
Yeah,
agreement.
because you changed the name. You said modern Judaism.
Okay, I'll call it cosmic Judaism.
There you go.
You
I
can
like
call it
that.
Reformed.
I like that because it's different. Now you're
There we
presenting
go.
something different. Now there's a
Okay.
change. If you again say I'm only Jewish, then you're not. That's no. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm glad we reached agreement. Judaism has always evolved, and I've carried it forward with cosmic Judaism. We're in agreement there, so that's a good thing. Let's open it up.
Finally. Okay, Donna, go ahead because I don't see Andy there. Unmute yourself and unmute yourself first, Donna.
Okay. Hi. Andy was really first. He had his hand up
I know,
forever.
but he's not in his box.
Okay. I just want to say that I think both Sean and Rabbi got off the topic of are we compatible with science?
Yeah.
And I think we got lost somewhere in the translation because that's what this was supposed to be about. I think in some ways I can see both of their points, but I would like to hear one sentence about why we can still be good Jews and be scientific and modern.
Okay, let me respond to that one because I thought for the last hour and a half, that's what I've been talking about. What I've been sharing with everyone is that you can apply science to Judaism, as Einstein said, and as Carl Sagan said, by doing this, by rejecting parts of Judaism that are irrational and not scientific, like the early stories in Genesis, and adopting Jewish values and ideals, which are consistent with science. So the answer to the question is absolutely, they're consistent and compatible. And as I mentioned, the great scientists think not only are they compatible, they're essential to each other, because if you apply science to Judaism, all that happens is it gives you a better understanding of the universe, a better understanding of how wondrous we are and creation is. It gives us more to be thankful for, more to be grateful for. It enhances our feelings of gratitude and awe and wonder. It enhances our ability to do what religion does. Religion is an effort to understand how did we get here? What are we doing here? And why are we the way we are? Science answers all of those questions extremely well. And if you apply those answers to a modern Jewish sense, applying Jewish ideals to the findings of science, you'll come up with something much better than science alone and much better than religion alone. You'll come up with a hybrid that's going to be the way that humanity can learn to survive into the next century and protect the planet and the environment. So they're not only compatible, they're essential, and they enhance Judaism. They don't undermine it.
And just to that point, for Sean, an example, when I was 15 years old, I went to the rabbi and I told him I didn't believe in Judaism and I didn't believe in God and I didn't believe in the Bible, and I thought that everything was foolish and ridiculous. And he asked me for an example, and I told him that my example was that I didn't believe that Moses and the chariots and the little bitty Jewish people were able to escape, that the ocean opened up and that all the Egyptians drowned, because that was ridiculous. And he said that I needed to listen to the Torah because there were moral stories in it, and that there also were stories that were ridiculous, but that could be explained with a very scientific reasoning. And I said, well, then explain that. And he said, how about that there was a total eclipse and that there was a very, very low tide, and then the tide came in on the Egyptians. I became a believer again. Not necessarily that there's a man sitting up in heaven with a beard watching over me, but I believe that there are very good lessons in the Torah and that we can all take our own interpretation from it. And that's what makes us cosmic, and that's why I'm following Rabbi Barry.
Okay.
I like the fact that Rabbi is doing this. I love the fact that the traditions are being challenged. But again, I'm kind of shocked that it seems like everyone is missing the point of what it was. You are getting rid of a lot of it, and now you're focusing on the positive, which you don't need Judaism for. There are thousands of books out there. There are thousands of better sources than Judaism. And because of that, you can actually have better morality. You can be better people. You can be more useful. You can be more scientific. All of that. None of it is relative or necessary to Judaism. And in the same way, we can actually look at Hamlet. Hamlet has horrible things, good things. Are people calling themselves Hamletists? No, not necessary. The same way with Torah. Torah, of course you can find good things in it. In Quran, of course you can find good things in it. But should you still actually claim to be Jewish? I don't think it's necessary, to be honest with you. I think humanity has a lot of good things to offer, and we need to get rid of these groups and wanting to separate each other, separate ourselves from the rest of the humanity. And that's why I don't like, I don't like to say even I'm American, I'm Iranian, nothing like that, because I'm actually influenced by so much culture from everywhere. And I'm grateful. It's based on my ability to pick and choose the best things that it's coming to me and reject the horrible things.
Let me respond. Okay. Well, we do the same thing in modern Judaism. And it's not just cosmic Judaism, it's Reform and Reconstructionists. They do the same thing. And it's not willy-nilly. We apply Jewish values and principles to guide the evolutionary process. As humans have evolved, so does religion. But let me just share with you something. Donna, I don't agree with your rabbi in this regard. I don't agree that it makes sense to try to claim that, well, maybe these stories really happened because maybe there was a low tide. These stories are mythological, pure and simple. There were not 10 plagues. They defy logic and common sense. You can show by reason and history that these things didn't happen. So I don't agree with rabbis who pretend that, well, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, maybe Adam and Eve really happened, maybe Noah's Ark really happened. They did not. happen. And I don't think it serves any purpose to confuse people and make them try to believe things that are not believable, because it just turns everybody away. And once you start using science and realize it didn't happen, it just creates atheists, agnostics, and creates people who want nothing to do with Judaism. So I say be straight with people. But let me answer your response, Sean. You're saying, well, I can find these values somewhere else, therefore I don't need to be Jewish. The logic doesn't make sense to me. Let's say hypothetically I could find it somewhere else. Does that mean I should reject my own heritage and tradition? Because well, it's my tradition, but it's somewhere else.
Yeah, you definitely should. Because you do. Because you do. Whether you want it or not, you're actually rejecting most of it.
No, I'm not rejecting most.
Really? Again, rape, genocide, all of that. Are you rejecting those or not?
Of course I reject.
All right, that's it. That's it. That's my point.
To you, that's it. To you, Judaism is nothing.
No, I'm not saying it's only that. But I'm saying for the good parts, there are better sources. Judaism has a lot of horrible things in it. If you reject it, it doesn't mean that it's not. And your version, obviously, it's better.
Let me respond, please. The very essence of Judaism is emet, tzedek, truth and righteousness. What that means is that Judaism has always been evolving, trying to discern truth. That's why the greatest scientists, many scientists are Jewish, because our religion teaches us to value truth. And the way we find truth is by learning and educating and reading and studying and improving over the generations. What you say is un-Jewish is the most Jewish thing of all. It's learning and growing and evolving. I'm not getting rid of Judaism. I'm practicing it. We don't throw away the baby with the holy water. And you say, well, there's better ways of doing it elsewhere. Maybe there are. That's disputable, but that doesn't mean I should reject my way. Judaism today has incredible symbolism. Shabbat candles to symbolize the light of reason and of science. Passover celebrating liberation. The high holidays to celebrate getting off to a fresh start. Yes, maybe you could find this somewhere else, but I know of no place that does this and makes it a habit. Every week, we have a vaccine against the disease of arrogance and intolerance. It's called love. A vaccine against ignorance is called truth and knowledge. And we in Judaism today offer this vaccine of love and of truth and of knowledge, and we give a booster shot every week. And maybe you could find it better somewhere else. But on Shabbat, what we do is, and it's not something that you would read about maybe, we try to get a glimpse into what the world could be like. We imagine a world of love and harmony, and we try to practice that for a day. And if we feel we can do it for a day, maybe we can make it 2 or 3 or 4. This is an incredible way of trying to bring about Jewish ideals. Maybe you could find it somewhere else better. I find it in my heritage, and I think it's a great thing that we should practice. Okay, who else?
And Les Rifkin, go ahead.
Hi, number one, I have the right to identify myself in any manner I please. And I happen to call myself a Jewish secular humanist. So yes, I'm a Jewish atheist. And as the rabbi was saying, I bring a lot of my cultural stuff into my everyday life. But I was thinking back to how is Judaism, or how is religion and science together? Well, the scientific principle is you observe a phenomenon, you create a hypothesis, and you test it. And this seems to be what they did throughout all the centuries of the Bible and the Bible's updating. Within the principles of Judaism, there's the essence of AA. There's the essence of sobriety, and I use the term sobriety not in terms of not drinking alcohol, but in terms of being sober in all your way of thinking about life, about other people, and about loving other people. In the, somewhere are the rules of kashrut, and that had to do with observing that you got sick when you ate from pigs. And that was way before the science came that proved that you got trichinosis from the pig. And that came from the scientific principle. The other part of this is prayer. Prayer, in some ways, is a form of meditation. Meditation and also the repetition in prayer and the repetition from week to week of reading the Torah is about stress reduction. Stress is perhaps the biggest enemy that we have as human beings to our own body, to our own well-being. So there was a lot of scientific principles built in to the religion and how we practice it. And that's all I'm going to say for right now.
Thank you, Les. Rabbi, you want to Rabbi, you're muted.
Yeah, let me thank you for your comments, and let me just share something adding to what you're talking about. The rules of kashrut were not just designed so that we would avoid trichinosis. The rules of kashrut involved slaughtering an animal in the most painless way possible, to make it as quick as possible, and also to say a blessing to recognize the sanctity of the animal in days before they were aware of how you could live without sacrificing animals. The basis for kashrut is kindness towards animals, even though they were slaughtering an animal. It seems paradoxical, but it's not paradoxical that in Israel, you have one of the largest movements of veganism in the world because of this belief in kindness towards animals in Judaism that teaches us to feed your animal before you feed yourself, and teaches us that if you see the enemy of your animal under a burden and you're inclined to say, good, lift the burden, help your enemy's animal. These things are part of Judaism. And as far as prayer is concerned, prayer and mindfulness, like you say, makes better people. It makes us better and happier when we give thanks. Our ancestors gave thanks to a supernatural being. I don't do that, but I can still give thanks to the miracles of nature. I can still stand in awe and reverence of nature instead of a personal God. It's a direct descendant of what my ancestors did. And it follows directly. Science does enhance Judaism because it fills us with a sense of awe and wonder about the universe. And the more we know about it, the greater our wonder. That's why sometimes they call worship, or they call science, informed worship. When we understand things, it gives us a better sense of the wondrous. And also another thing that Einstein said, we can look at the world as if nothing's a miracle or everything's a miracle. Science shows us that everything is a miracle and it's all natural, that nature is miraculous and we should give thanks for nature. And that's a basic, not only a principle of Judaism, but we act upon it by observing it throughout the year, giving thanks, offering food to the poor, celebrating nature, having a birthday of the trees. I mean, these things are integral to Judaism. Anybody else want to share some thoughts? Yes.
So if you're talking about prayer, prayer is not necessarily just giving thanks. It's actually asking or talking to God, technically. So, of course, namaz in Islam, it can be argued that it's a form of meditation. Do I need to do namaz to actually meditate? It's not necessary. Just meditate. It's much more beneficial. Give thanks. Instead of actually giving thanks, as you said, go out and help out. Give back to the community. Again, just the fact that these things happens to be a part of the translation of your prayer doesn't mean it's an essential part of, or it should be essential part of Judaism, because there's also a lot of other things only about prayer, let's say, part of Judaism. So what you're doing, again, is getting rid of all the other ones, holding the ones that it's dear to you, and just like that, anybody else who can do the same thing. I say, let's get rid of all and start from the best method possible, which is, again, science, experiments, ethics. There's a whole bunch of books about this, psychology, neuroscience. Of course, we know these things because some Jewish people who did not follow their faith became less technically Jewish or followed their faith and became scientists. Otherwise, they would say it's God's will. Let's pray. So precisely by being exactly the opposite of what the faith tells, people become scientists. So these two cannot be compatible compared to the old ones, obviously. Your version, it is compatible, absolutely, because you got rid of all the negative.
Well, let me share another way of looking at it. I appreciate what you're saying, but let me share another way of looking at it. When Jewish people started studying science and tried to apply that to Judaism, they didn't abandon their faith, they strengthened it, and they applied Jewish principles of study and learning. Part of what being Jewish is all about is the search for truth, emet. It's basic. And Jews are people of the book. We study, we learn, we grow, we evolve. Evolution of thought is part of what it means to be Jewish. Let's take the concept of prayer. I agree with you, Sean. Praying to a supernatural entity for anything is worse than a waste of time, because it makes you childlike in thinking, I'm going to wait for God to do it, and it takes the responsibility away from yourself, and you become inactive, waiting for something to happen. Prayer has also been more than that. I define prayer in this way. Prayer is our effort to imagine or contemplate what our life could be like if we lived up to certain ideals. I would say Jewish ideals, you could use any ideals, of truth and justice and friendship and peace and shalom. That's what prayer is now, not because God is telling us do this, and science and Jewish ideals are telling us. What's collective prayer? Like you say, I can do it myself. Why do I need to bother showing up in a synagogue and saying prayers with a bunch of people? I'll tell you why. Because you could look at prayer in this way. If prayer is my ability to imagine a better life for myself and think about how I can make it happen, collective prayer is a way that the Jewish people can imagine a better world and get behind this together and say, let's all imagine a world of peace and shalom and kindness and justice. That's what we do on Shabbat. That's what we do on the high holidays. We imagine a world that's better, and we actually think about ways that we can do it. And it can't be done without science, because science tells us the planet is being destroyed by climate change. And so we need science to know how to make the world better. Science tells us animals feel pain, they can suffer. We need science to tell us that. Science tells us that the fetus is not a human being at conception. That's silly. And so we need science to help us figure out why women should have the right. Science enhances that. And so science and Judaism both go hand in hand in the separate. But I do agree with you, Sean, that the people who are relying on God to do it, it's worse than a waste of time. And if they're praying to God, wanting to be like God, who commits all these atrocities, it's worse than if there was no religion at all. If it's not evolving, it's worse. I think we got Andy Sussman back on. And I apologize, Andy, for going on so long. But we have a fascinating guest, and so I just wanted to have a full dialogue. But go ahead, Andy, tell us what's on.
I just want to summon up the memory of Baruch Spinoza, who was the forerunner of Einstein and Sagan. And in a nutshell, in terms of God, it all goes back to how you define God. And Baruch said that God is the totality of reality, all. And he got excommunicated from Judaism. So if you're questioning, if you're looking for somebody who was pushing the envelope against the status quo, that would be him. And he made it much easier for Einstein and Sagan, I think.
Yeah. Well, you're kind of confirming what Sean says, because if he was excommunicated for teaching a new view of God, what you're saying is he was rejected by the Jewish people, and he was rejected at that time by the Jewish people. But they say all great ideas go through three phases. First, they're ridiculed, then violently opposed, and then accepted as obvious. Spinoza was at the stage where he was violently opposed, but now Jews have started to accept this new concept, but it's small and it's incremental. But
Well,
yes, Spinoza was a great pioneer.
If I was to bring Sean's perspective in a little bit, and Rabbi, perhaps Rabbi would like to write his own Torah, taking in mind that perhaps God, quote unquote, or the God of the Torah, is not really a real estate agent. You know, he promising this land, you do this, I give you that, yada, yada. And I say that in the context, perhaps Rabbi can reconcile writing this new Torah and making peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
Well, that's a great thought. I'm actually working on a book about cosmic Judaism. I'm not going to rewrite the Torah. Just like I have things that I've written as a child, I'm not going to rewrite them now and write them as I would as an adult. I like to see where we've come from. The Torah was our first effort to understand God and the world, not our last. And we need these stories because they teach us essential eternal values, as well as things that we've outgrown that we need to reject. But I am working on a book, Cosmic Judaism, that'll explain fully how we reconcile Judaism and science. And I'm very interested in getting Sean's reaction to it, and maybe a statement from him on the book when I write it, because I have great respect for his knowledge about science and religion and how they could be compatible or why they're not. Who else is on the line? Anybody else want to share some thoughts? All right. Donna, do you want to say something else?
Unmute. Donna, unmute first.
Okay. Both of you seem to be saying to me that if I am a Jew and I don't believe in this man with the white beard up there, then I'm an atheist. Were you saying that to me? Because I don't feel that way. Because I feel that I believe that God lives within me with love, with the things that I do. And that's part of what makes me a Jew. But I also think that my tradition and my heritage are what make me a Jew. That my life wouldn't be fulfilled if I didn't have the high holidays, or I didn't have Passover, or I didn't have Hanukkah. That it's all that tied together, the remembrances, the traditions, and I know I sound like Fiddler on the Roof, but I feel like Fiddler on the Roof sometimes, that's where God lives. He lives within me and within all those traditions and the traditions of my ancestors. And that I was always told that the Bible, the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, was written by men. And my mother used to say it was because their kids were bored in the desert for 40 years and they had to tell them all kinds of crazy stories. And that we were always taught as Jews to take what we needed from the Torah. The end. I said enough for the night.
Donna,
thank you.
I think you summarized the issue very well. And what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, Sean, is have Donna's question serve as a catalyst for our concluding statements. And I'd like to give you a concluding statement, and then I'll take one. But before that, we'll go to Andy, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, so I won't talk, a few seconds here. So one of my favorite people to reference and to summon are the Native Americans or Aboriginal peoples, because they have a very deep-seated connection to the land as they communicate their spirituality. So give me 2 seconds, I'll grab my guitar, which is right here, and we could sing 1 or 2 different songs, but the one you're all familiar with, as we bless the source of light and life, so we are blessed. But there's another song that I've done on occasion, and it's called Baruch Dear One. And the words will speak to you in a minute. The first half of it, you echo, the second half but I'll do it. You don't sing, just listen and I'll pretend to be you. Here we go. I want you to hear the vibe of a Native American vibe. And the question is, as we just debating religion versus science versus what does God mean? What is connection? I think they can all coexist. But anyway, here's a song that'll communicate that. Baruch Hu, dear one, Shekhinah. Holy name, when I call on the light of my soul, I come home. Baruch Hu, dear one, Shekhinah. Holy name, when I call on the light of my soul, I come home. So in one little tiny package of a song, channeling Native American vibe, channeling source, talking about soul, I think that we can sort of reconcile these different positions of science, religion, Judaism, other people's perspectives. If we jettison some of the cultural stuff and just see ourselves as light and soul, maybe we'll envision a world that John Lennon envisioned.
Well, I do thank you, Andy. The term soul has been used by most religious people to mean some type of incorporeal part of us that lives on, which I reject. But if you're talking about the essence of people and the life force that took a cell and made 100 trillion of them into a human being that's in all living things, I can go along with that. But let me turn it over to Sean for your concluding comments, and then I'll make my concluding comments, and we'll call it a night. We'll probably conclude, I'd say, somewhere around 9:05 or so, if you're wondering. But go ahead, Sean.
I thank you all, first of all. I had a blast. It's always good to talk about things that we disagree, which unfortunately most things we do agree. It's just terminologies, words, and what we mean by saying something. So it doesn't make a difference, Rabbi, you're a good person. I have massive amount of respect for you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this, even though maybe my followers disagree with you or don't like the fact that maybe your title is Rabbi. I appreciate you taking the effort and fighting the good fight to change humanity for better. To me, results matter. Titles and things don't really mean anything to me. Therefore, heritage doesn't mean anything to me. Therefore, citizenship of a nationality doesn't mean anything to me. A lot of people, I migrated to United States about 22 years ago, 23 years ago. So majority of my life I've been here. And this is a melting pot. I live in Southern California, so there's a lot of people from everywhere. And it was beautiful because I was exposed to a lot of different cultures. And because of that, I was exposed to different mindsets, foods. I freaking love food. It's wonderful. Why the hell do I want to limit myself to one food or one cuisine? So in that kind of sense of the word, I really don't care about heritage. It was horrible. Back in the days, everyone were, I'm so sorry, but backwards idiots because we weren't advanced as we are right now. So that's why for being a scientist, you have to reject majority of those superstitions in order to be able to replace it with correct information. You can't believe in something wrong and at the same time believe in science. These two are not compatible in that particular subject of science, obviously. So in that regard, again, like, I love the fact that I don't look at humans as of race, as of sex, as of people of this land or that land. I look at different cultures that I can learn from constantly. And this is wonderful. Earth is mine, and I am part of Earth. And same with even different animals. Like any creature that can feel pain, I have to look out for because I'm stronger. It's a responsibility. So thinking about these things, thinking outside the box is extremely important. Don't limit yourself with different types of prides. I would say I'm actually shocked when I see or hear, I'm sorry, when someone says, I'm proud to be American. That is insane to me. Proud of being something that you actually achieved. Just the fact that you were lucky enough right now in this time to be born in North America, and in North America, United States, there should be no pride. You can be happy about it. I can say I'm proud to be American because I actually achieved it. It was my hard work that made it happen. So screw heritage, screw background. Of course we can respect it. Of course we can learn so much about it, but let's change. Let's not get stuck with the old words and old books and old traditions and things like that. Life, this earth, this cultures that billions of people have worked so hard to actually give us, all of it is ours, not just our limited bubble. So in that aspect, again, thank you so much for having me and welcoming me to your community. You guys are wonderful people. Every single time I have a blast, and thank you as always, Rabbi. Like whenever we talk, by the way, I have to say this, it goes for hours because I enjoy his conversations. He's a wonderful person. On top of him being knowledgeable, he is a wonderful person. He's actually really trying to do good. There's a lot of religious figures that they are there for the money, for respect, for different reasons. I really like him because he's not for that. And he's actually getting shunned and attacked and treated not well because of the things that he does. And standing up for science, for humanity, for betterment of people. So I appreciate that. Cheers.
Sean, I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as the beer. I can only tell you that I always love speaking with you. It's a great pleasure, and I have massive respect for you in being able to share and promote rational discourse and science. Science is our best hope for humanity. And thank you for everything you do, and thank you for blessing us and gracing us with your presence. I do want to share something in response to what Donna said. I reject the biblical view of God. I'm not an agnostic about it. I'm not in doubt about it. I know for a fact that that God doesn't exist, and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful that there's no celestial dictator ordering us to kill people who disagree with our religion, or who disagree with the way we're practicing it. We're practicing in the wrong way. Or saying we should stone a woman if she's not a virgin when she gets married. This is not just something to doubt. It's something to categorically reject, and good riddance. But Donna, to answer your question, our ancestors understood that there was an incredible, immense, wondrous power at work in this world. And they understood that life was majestic and glorious and awesome. And they recognized that humanity, there's something in us that's similar to the other animals, but it's different. It gives us a conscious mind and a conscience to separate right from wrong. And they wanted to better understand it. So they embarked on a path down the road to trying to understand the world the creative power behind it, and how to live in harmony with it, and how to be just moral people. They didn't get it right in the beginning. As Hitchens says, it was their first effort, maybe our worst one, not our best, and not our last. Fortunately, Jews are not stuck in the past. Some are, but some, like some primates, decided to venture out from the safety of the forest onto the savannah and were forced to evolve and change. Some Jews are doing that. I agree with you about traditions. Traditions are beautiful, but they're really waste of our time. And they're not as beautiful as they could be unless the tradition leads us to practice Jewish ideals of kindness and love for others. The Jewish holidays are wonderful ways to get together with a family, but they're lacking. They're not doing what they're supposed to do if they don't make us better people and bring out the best in us. The Jewish holidays and blessings and prayers and Sabbath and rituals and all of it. I agree with Sean. Take it all and toss it away. If all that it's doing is just making us mindlessly repeat things from the past, we can say, oh, good, I'm a Jewish person and I'm part of this group and I'm not part of that group. If that's what it's there for, forget about it. My father taught me a different way of looking at all of it. All of these things, all of it, they're symbols, they're ways of triggering these feelings of gratitude and love. Sean's right. I don't need them. But like if I have a coach who's going to tell me, go work out today, go train in tennis, go do this on a regular basis, I'll be better. And we're better people if it's regularized, if it's systematized, if we have symbols and ways of thinking that's going to reinforce these positive ideals. It'll make us better people. And so Sean doesn't care much about heritage. I do. I study languages, I study cultures, I study Native American culture. I think all these cultures and heritages, they're all wonderful expressions of humanity and the diversity of humanity. And if we can purge them of irrational nonsense and use science in all of them to better equip us to deal with reality, then all of these cultures will be better. And the reason why I cling to the Jewish heritage is because the Jews after the Holocaust produced Elie Wiesel. He did not seek vengeance against those who tormented him. He said, we must become the conscience of the world to make sure that this horror never happens to anyone else. And he went around preaching against genocide. And Jewish groups have formed all types of organizations to fight genocide because of what happened to us. Do you have to be Jewish to do that? Absolutely not. There's many people of many cultures and many heritages doing it, but ours is one of them. And finally, I'll end with this. Jews have faith. It doesn't have to be an irrational, supernatural being. We have faith in the goodness and the kindness of humanity, that the good part of us is better than the bad part, that the kindness can overcome the evil, and that if we apply ourselves to good ideals and principles, we can create a better world. Not everyone believes that. Some people think humans are innately evil. Some people think that we're always corrupt. Some people think the world will always be as it is. Not the Jew. The Jew has an indomitable spirit in the goodness and faith and the kindness of humanity. And if we believe something is true, then science tells us it can become true. What we believe becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And Jewish prophets said, one day we will live in peace and harmony and love. And that prophetic vision is what leads us today to try to become better Jews. Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you, Sharon, for organizing this. Thank you for the patience of those who stayed on until the end. You can catch this on cyberspace. Sean, you're always welcome. I consider you to be the greatest exponent of what religion should be and what science should be. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to more conversations in 2022. And I don't drink beer, but if I did, I'd share one with you. But maybe next time I'll have some drink also. We can drink together. But for now, live long and prosper. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining us.